Hello, and welcome back. It is almost July, which means that I am fed up with summer and its heat, and I'm yearning for fall. Yearning for cooler weather, fall colors, pumpkin patches, and of course, Halloween. One thing that makes it feel more like spooky season to me is horror movies. While I do watch them year-round, I do my own personal 31 days of Halloween every October and try to watch a movie or a special every day. I love everything on my list, but it hasn't been updated in a while. I think the most recent movie on it is The Witch from 2015. Now, I've heard multiple people in the horror community say that 2022 was the best year for new horror releases in the last few decades.
2022 will go down as probably the most stacked year for horror in our lifetime.
And yeah, I gotta say, the ones that I have already seen, I really liked most of them. But I want to see as many of them as I can to see if any of them can earn a spot on my yearly Halloween viewing list. So I found a list online of every horror movie released in 2022, cross-referenced with IMDb to find their release date, and I'm going to try to watch them in order of release. Fair warning, this challenge has no strict rules. I primarily used each movie's first limited release date when it would have become available for the most amount of people to watch. I was wrestling with including foreign movies and what release date I should use, since so many first premiere at film festivals, or they release in their native country before coming to the US. For example, Talk to Me was technically released at the Adelaide Film Festival in October of 2022, but it was not released in the US or anywhere else until January 2023. I kind of wanted to talk about it, so I considered changing my rules, but then I realized in doing so, that would mean I have to include Skinamarink also, and I just really don't want to sit through that movie. I avoided sequels and franchise entries if I haven't seen the others. So for example, I included Scream because I've seen all of those, but I did not include Halloween Ends because I'm very behind on that franchise. Same with Texas Chainsaw. I'm pretty far behind, so I didn't include the newest release of that one. One last thing, I have most streaming platforms, but not all of them. So if it's gonna cost me half a tank of gas to rent one or two of these movies, I'm sorry, but I may have to skip a few. Streaming availability changes all the time though, so I will watch as many as I possibly can with the resources that I have. So without further ado, let's get started because this is a very long list. We're going to be starting off with Scream. Scream 5? I'm going to call it Scream 5. I have a history with the Scream franchise, as do most horror fans. I first saw the original when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Obviously, I was too young to appreciate the humor and the references, I was just afraid of it. I didn't watch it again until I was an adult, and then I fell in love with it, and the original Scream is on my list. Will Scream 5 bump it off? Absolutely not. But it is a very enjoyable movie. This one takes place 25 years after the events of the original.
Sounds about right.
It brings back our legacy characters, Dewey, Gale, and
Sidney fucking Prescott.
But this movie is also about passing the story on to a new generation.
Hi! Gen Z, how are you?
I really like the new cast of characters. They have great chemistry and they all do a really good job. I'm going to try my best to keep this spoiler-free because the most fun part of a Scream movie is the reveal. We start, as all Scream movies do, with a phone call. Tara answers their landline phone? It is 2022, right? Anyway, the caller says he's Charlie, a friend of her mom's who Tara suspects might be her mom's new boyfriend. But of course, he soon breaks out the classic Ghostface voice and breaks into Tara's house. The only difference with this attack compared to the earlier movies, Tara survives it and ends up in the hospital. Wes, the son of Deputy Hicks from Scream 4, texts Tara's estranged sister Sam to let her know what happened, and she heads back to Woodsboro with her new boyfriend Richie. Sam and Richie meet up with Tara's friend group at the hospital. While there, Sam is attacked in the break room but is able to get away. Sam then lets Tara in on some family gossip that explains both why their dad left their mom and why Sam has been estranged for the past 5 years. Tara doesn't take it well and kicks Sam out of the room. Meanwhile, the guy from Smile and Jennifer's Body is attacked by Ghostface outside a bar, while inside, Tara's friend group reminds us that they are all suspects. Richie and Sam deduce that since Tara won't talk to her, and the police at the hospital haven't been able to keep them safe so far, they need some additional help. so they go visit everyone's favorite horror movie deputy, Dewey Riley, since he's been through this scenario multiple times at this point. Dewey calls Sydney and texts Gale, warning them to stay far away from Woodsboro because Ghostface is back.
Do you have a gun?
Of course I have a gun.
Good.
They all then meet up with Tara's friends to figure out who the next victim is, and Mindy determines the killer is making a requel to the original Stab, the in-universe parallel to the real-life Scream franchise.
New main characters, yes, but supported by and related to legacy characters. Not quite a reboot, not quite a sequel.
Shortly after, another double attack takes place, and Gale, never one to miss an opportunity for a juicy story, arrives in Woodsboro against Dewey's advice. I'm not gonna lie, this reunion made me tear up. I love these two both in the franchise and in real life. Richie is back at the hotel brushing up on his Stab lore, and I am majorly Leo DiCaprio pointed when I saw he was watching James and Chelsea from Dead Meat in a cameo.
Stab? What, just like the original?
Sam calls Richie from the crime scene, letting him know Ghostface killed 2 more, and while she's on the phone, she realizes that the cops who were assigned to watch over Tara at the hospital are here instead.
Who's watching my sister?
Realizing that means Tara is alone, Sam and Dewey book it over to the hospital, and sure enough, Ghostface is there. There's a fight which ends in a very painful tragedy that made me cry, which I won't spoil here. That being said, I really don't want to give too much more away. From this point on, it's going to be difficult to avoid spoilers. I will just say the last act ends in a house party just like the original, and one tiny spoiler, it takes place in Stu Macher's house, which was put on the market after the first movie.
You're in Stu Macher's house.
It's a really good reveal that I didn't immediately notice, and they did an awesome job modernizing the set and revealing it.
You know what? There he is. I told you. He's around the corner. Jamie, look behind you.
It's an action-packed, tense third act, and on a first watch, I personally did not pick up on the killers from the start. I thought it was a good, shocking reveal. However, in hindsight, on a second watch, some people probably figured it out pretty early on. There are a lot of little details that I would love to point out, but I'm also trying so hard not to spoil anything. I do want to point out one line of Gale's that I really liked. She says she will not be writing about these attacks as she has done in the past.
Those can die in anonymity.
When tragedies happen, school shootings, serial murders, it's not the victims' names who people know best, it's the killer's name. Do you know the Columbine shooters' names? How many of their victims do you know by name? How many serial killer documentaries and podcasts are released every year? I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about these things. Knowing the warning signs and reminding people to look out for each other is wildly important.
Go out the back!
Thank you.
However, their name in the news next to a shocking story and a high body count is what a lot of these shooters have claimed they were chasing after. So I appreciated that sentiment from Gale. From the franchise as a whole, actually, considering the main characters in these movies. Think about Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw. The villains are always the same, and almost all of the rest of the cast changes. Not Scream, our main characters were always Sydney, Dewey, and Gale. And instead, the killer was new each time. Even with this installment, we now follow Sam and Tara. The main focus and empathy is always for our survivors. I really enjoyed this movie. It does a great job keeping with the tradition of humor, twists, and brutal kills as all the other entries. Which is extra notable considering that this is the first installment in the franchise to be made without Wes Craven. The franchise has now been entrusted to the Radio Silence team, some of their notable horror contributions being VHS, Ready or Not, which I absolutely love, and their most recent release, Abigail. They brilliantly blend horror and comedy, and you can just feel their passion and love for the Scream franchise. If someone was going to keep it going without Wes, I'm so glad that it's them. Honestly, there really isn't much that I didn't like about this movie. The sets looked great, I think all the performances were fantastic, I loved seeing the legacy characters back in action. The killer's motives were maybe a bit far-fetched, but I mean, aren't they always? Scream movies are always good at commenting on the changing horror genre tropes, and this one is no different. This one comments on crazy fans and fan service and remakes and sequels, while also providing fan service itself. I have no problem with that. I will Leonardo DiCaprio point my way through seeing these legacy characters, and willingly accept their connections to the new characters. So will it be added to my Halloween list? As a standalone movie, no. But since the best one, the original Scream, has been on my list for years, maybe this will just get tacked on to make it a double feature. Now, I know I skipped over a lot to avoid spoilers. If you don't mind spoilers for future reviews, let me know and I can go more in depth. Personally, I like going into a movie totally blind. I don't watch trailers, I don't look at cast lists, I barely skim the description. The only thing I check before watching a movie is doesthedogdie.com. But anyway, if you made it this far, thank you so much, super appreciated. Have you seen Scream? What did you think? Does it hold up in the franchise? Let me know down below, and I will see you guys in the next review.